So welcome, guys. We have Ocean from Obol, Pablo over here from Diva, Paul Lansky from DAppNode, and SafeStake we have Marco. Welcome, guys.
Pleasure to be here.
Could you take a little time and explain a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your protocols?
Sure, yeah. I'm happy to start. So nice to meet you all. My name is Oshin. I'm CTO and co-founder at Obol. Obol is one of the projects building distributed validator technology for Ethereum. We've been working on this, well, back in consensus since about 2018, but formally as Obol since mid-2021. Currently, we're on mainnet and alpha phase, and what's unique about our DVT is that we are a middleware and don't have access to the private keys after you create them. We'll talk more about it after this.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Appreciate for the invite from host. My name is Marco, project lead at SafeStake, and I'm also co-host of UC Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator back in 2021. SafeStake is a trust minimized middle layer, and the first distributed validator technology written in Rust that promote decentralized Ethereum staking to help mitigate the current single point failure, improve validator security and resilience, also maximizing validator rewards. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the invite. My name is Lansky. I'm the project lead at DAppNode. I am a semi-OG, an eternal noob, and what we do at DAppNode is we help people run nodes. So we're probably, well, not probably, we're definitely not the only one non-DVT here, but we are sort of like the platform that will make running these DVTs seamless and extremely easy for any user without any sort of technical knowledge to be able to run any of these beautiful platforms and protocols that we have here.
Hi everyone, I'm Pablo from Diva, and Diva stands for Distributed Validation. So what Diva does is it's a liquid staking protocol that integrates very tightly with DVT. So you have two sides. You either can stake your ETH without having to run any hardware, or you can run a node operator with DAppNode or on your own server if you have a existing setup to kind of power that network. And what makes Diva different is that as opposed to be powered by a few parties, people like Lido do, we power it natively by DVT. So in a way, the validation is happening truly as a consensus of the network.
Great. Thank you, guys. Very happy to have all of you here. Thanks for joining. So to kick us off, I wanted to go, I guess, a little bit in depth in this discussion. So I think a lot of people here are familiar with the concept of DVT, and we can get into that a little bit as well in explanations. But there's this idea of shared liquidity in the network. There's LSTs where people are staking together and put their liquidity together, get rewards together. And now there's this emergence of shared infrastructure through DVT. Multiple people have access to it, and it adds this reliability, this resilience to ETH staking. So what I'm curious, and maybe Oisin, sorry.
Don't worry, Oshin.
Oshin. You can kick us off and explain a little bit, like, is it possible to reuse this, or is DVT simply just this layer that people can stake on, or could it be used for something more? Can it be developed into middlewares? Can it help like develop in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I would say that in the short answer, yes, there's more than just distributed validated. Well, it can be applied to more than just staking. Most notably, a lot of the layer 2s are trying to figure out how they decentralize their sequencer. A sequencer is more or less a fancy word for a validator. It produces blocks. So there's a lot of things that you can potentially do in making sequences groups, because what DVT does is it makes a validator be run by a group. So sequencers is a big one that I would highlight. And then also Vitalik has published research about putting Oracle updates on chain, but through the use of distributed validators, that gives you kind of a bit more reliability that you're going to get an honest Oracle, because you have to come to consensus on what the Oracle update is. It isn't just one person. This can be particularly important for a lot of liquid staking tokens that regularly rely on kind of Oracle updates for now, because we can't quite get the info from the consensus layer. So yeah, that would probably be the two I would kind of highlight. But yeah, there's more than just validation that it can be used for.
So that sounds exciting. It's finding other ways that people can use this infrastructure to add security to other parts of the ecosystem.
Trust minimized signing is sometimes what we talk about.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. Does somebody have somebody else to add? Marco, would you like to chime in here?
Before answering this question, I would first want to ask how many people here are running a solo sticker? Oh, good. Because running without DVT, running a solo sticker is not easy. You have to run a consensus client and execution client. Besides that, in order to make sure your node is online to attest, to maximize your reward, you also need to run some back-end monitoring system like Prometheus and Grafana. And with DVT, we actually separate the validator role into two, validator and operator. And validator is just the party who need to deposit Ether on Beacon chain and delegate the validation task to operator. And operator are the party running all the hardware, do the dirty job, because we would placing a single validator node infer with a operator committee organized by multiple independent nodes. And so validator can be run in a trustless manner. And in Vitalik's world, we can run a blinded DVT, which means operator don't need to know which sticker they are assisting. So in this regard, the validator role can be extracted further to become a revenue flow binding with the Ethereum consensus. Because this feature is extracted, so either with staking protocol and LSD protocol can build Lego on top of it.
Great, thank you.
I have a little thought model about that, right? So the reason we have staking is because there's these crypto economic incentives, and cryptography guarantees that everything you do is valid whenever you can, but you can't guarantee that somebody will show up to work. And that's why we have these economic incentives. So when we're talking restaking, what we're saying is, hey, I'm going to be doing more things that I'm responsible for, and I want to be taking more responsibility. So this idea of restaking is not more yield for free. It means that you're actually committing to doing more things. And because of that, you're getting more rewards. And maybe you can use the same collateral. But I think where DVT fits in all this is DVT has the potential to improve uptime by potentially 2-3 orders of magnitude. Again, depending on correlations and a lot of other factors. But anything that makes staking better and more secure, like DVT, has potentially huge implications. And for me, I still have this idea that staking is non-custodial with your funds, but most staking today is custodial with your keys. And what DVT allows you to do is distribute that again and go back to the principles of blockchain, which are really using consensus networks to agree on what's the truth.
Yeah, that sounds like very similar to what Ocean was saying. You know, it's not touching the keys, right?
Yeah, I didn't call him out on that.
Bull, do you have anything to add here? Otherwise,
sure. I think that from the point of view of the node runners and the solo stakers particularly, I think that a very important thing for them is to make use of their existing setup already, right? So it's this sense of economies of scope. When we talk about, everybody knows about economies of scale. It's about specializing on one thing, doing it extremely well, and you get to divide the costs. And economies of scope are those who diversify onto different things with the same hardware. And once you have the setup, once you have an Ethereum validator setup, you have as Marco was saying, you need the execution layer client, you need the consensus layer client, you might have other things on top like MEV boost, you might have a Web3 signer, and once you have this setup, you can basically run like a lot of validators on top of that. And not only a lot of validators, but a lot of protocols on top of that. You can run, and the cost, the computing cost of that is minimal, because the heavy burden is to have this basically Ethereum running, right? Like the execution, the consensus layer. And everything that you can put on top is basically free money for the solo stakers. And I think that's the important part.
Great, thank you. I think, you at DAppNode, this kind of leads us into a whole nother topic. It's, with DVT, there comes a lot of advantages when we're talking about this concept of restaking, where there can be multiple people who own a validator together. They have this cluster, right? 4 people, one validator. And now, if we're talking about extending Ethereum's security, that's 4 people who are able to participate rather than 1. So it adds a layer of security, and at the same time, it gives more economic opportunities for people. So I'm curious, are there, what do these advantages look like? What would it look like for these people? Would it make sense for, potentially somebody, they could own 4 DApp nodes, they could split the key themselves, get access in 4 different ways? Or, how can we scale this with DVT?
Yeah, I think you're touching on a really good question, which is DVT is an order of magnitude improvement kind of technology, but it really depends on how you use it to get those benefits, right? So some people might use it for resiliency. So you're like, oh, I want to distribute between my own data centers. But the same primitive you can also use for different economic models. For example, the way we use it at Diva is most people are passive stakers and don't want to be running a node. So if you collect a small fee from these passive stakers, you can create a much higher incentive for those active operators. And this actually, conceptually, is exactly the concept of restaking. In Diva, if you take your LST, unlock it, and you're operating a node, you will generate more DivEth, which is the LST. So that's a very simple example, but I think it gets exciting if you're able to stack up those things. Because Diva is just one network. But if we could get this interconnectivity or this marketplace where we can connect and stack different solutions, then people could mix and match and use their existing setups to power different networks and come a bit closer to the shared security concept.
I think I keep bashing on this at every talk that I have the opportunity, but I think it opens the door, DVT opens the door for economic accessibility. And economic accessibility is basically giving the opportunity to people that do not have the monolithic block of 32 ETH to do work, eliminate this 32 ETH barrier of entry, and allow them to participate in securing the network that is becoming the future of the internet right now. Is allowing them direct access to protocol revenue from these people without them having to front 32 ETH in advance. And DVT allows you to do that because everybody knows why, because you can split the risk between many other operators, you can require a much smaller bond, et cetera, et cetera. The point here is that a lot of people, thanks to DVT, will have access to this protocol revenue, but it's not only good for them, it's good for the ecosystem as well. Because right now we have potentially a set of potential validators that are basically rich people. And if we expand this to a lot of different regions in the world, what we get is, apart from these different regions in the world having access to earning revenue from this and avoiding the problem that we were talking before about the rich getting richer, you can also enable the centralization properties that emerge by upgrading the validator set geographically, geopolitically, on hardware, on ISPs, on a whole bunch of stuff that are necessarily good and strictly better for the network than if we didn't have DVTs.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Lansky said. I think that's one of the things that particularly excites me about it. For the most part, even like taking part in an LST, like I think someone said 4 ETH was the lowest bond. That's still, $8,000, give or take. For the vast majority of people, that's, extremely prohibitive. I regularly think about the kind of, young kid with like a CS degree that has a laptop, has the hardware, has the means, the technical ability, but no hope of getting the capital. With distributed validators, they can get the capital from others because they don't have to take a solo risk on someone they don't know, put it on it. It's like, yeah, there's 4 of you guys, better yet, there's 10 of you, there's some community, you manage it, you steward it. It makes it much more accessible for people, and there's, as you said, incentive for the people with the capital looking to preserve it, to pick really decentralized ones, to pick communities that are not going to fail at the same time as AWS US East 1. And yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that excites me most about it, is getting people that would have no hope of getting in otherwise into proof of stake.
Great, thank you guys. So this brings into another question. So with DAppNode, there is this beautiful Dapp store, right, where anybody can come, they can run some additional services on their DAppNode, particularly once they have a validator set up. And now with the introduction of Blockswap Cloud and K2 and these other restaking protocols, there needs to be a marketplace for these validators to access the middleware. And I'm curious if there's any thoughts on how this could play out. If you know, there's these premium validators who can get access to different services, you know, how would we give them rating systems? Is it based off of their Ethereum consensus? Like, do we want to base it off of Ethereum, or is this something a little bit different? I'm just trying to get a picture of, you know, what this could look like. And I think the DAppNode Dapp Store is kind of this premium example. Like, how can this be expanded? Lansky, do you have some thoughts where you could kind of lead us with this?
Yeah, I think there's 2 key aspects here, and we want something that's permissionless. And we want something that is also trustworthy. And I didn't say trustless.
Right.
I said trustworthy.
Different.
When we're dealing with stuff that you want to put on your validator, you want to make sure that you're running middleware or all of these parts that this is safe. I think Vincent was mentioning before that there is a stopgap solution inbuilt in Keith squared, and there's this stopgap solution that if you start getting slashed consecutively because something is wrong with the software, the protocol itself detects that this is not a normal slashing event and has to do with something and just exits the validator right here. I think this is the way to go. There needs to be something that is permissionless, but also protects the solo staker and protects the person that wants to put this infrastructure up there, because they are going to be doing people a service. They're going to be, but they might not have necessarily the complete expertise to run 3, 4, 5, 6 protocols. How many of you are following up to the node operator detail with more than 3 protocols? Hell, I cannot even keep up with 1 protocol. There's things that escape me still. So we cannot expect this for this. So we need to have some sort of mechanism that has this inbuilt stopgaps, the inbuilt protection for the node running themselves. And of course, this is apart from the protection for the people that are staking there and of the apps or the apps that borrow the security from there as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Good.
I would like to echo Lansky's perspective. So imagine we will have an approach that to be onboarding a validator that asset coming from multiple depositors in a permissionless, trustless, and trustworthy approach. So imagine that there's an operator that he just deposit no matter 8 ETH, for example, like Rocky Pool approach now, or 4 ETH to activate a online process to run DKG protocol, and then he can pick other 3 or multiple operator node to organize a operator committee to generate a prior key to manage this mini pool validator and pair the balance 24 or 28 Ether from the LSD pool on top. So in such manner, this mini pool validator with full 32 Ether register on Bitcoin chain are actually in a trustless manner and decentralized because neither party can hold the completely private key and control the asset. So in this regard, the whole validator infrastructure can be achieved the goal that Lansky mentioned.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, yeah, Ocean. I guess I was hoping that maybe you could build on a little bit of what Lansky said, and if I may, I add another layer to the question at this point. So if we're talking about these marketplaces that validators have access to adding, could DVT present another one where there could be sort of this super committee or this super group with access to particular services that could give more resiliency, or parties could say, we want access to DVT in particular rather than just a solo staker or somebody else? Like, is there?
Yeah, so I guess there's a few things. So at that question of, are there people that would like access to distributed validators? Absolutely. I think that's one thing that's very important, is that these are relatively accessible. I don't think anyone here wants to kind of protect DVT and gatekeep it. I think everyone wants to see it out and used. I kind of consider it a very common Web 2 technology, regularly known as high availability. I think the vast majority of validators will be running in some sort of DVT in the next kind of few years. But what I will push back on is the trickiness of a marketplace, or worse, an objective rating of kind of who's running a distributed validator. This is one of the things that's it would be great to do, but it's ripe for abuse if you go kind of completely permissionless.
How do you rate them then without abusing?
Obol is gives the software to the LSPs to use it, and they can curate it, and the idea.
So I guess I'm thinking would Ethereum be a good way to kind of rank it? If you're saying if they're performing Ethereum optimally, that's a premium validator.
Well, that's a good answer for the group, but how do you define who in that group is doing that well? Because one of them can be offline and being no, don't worry, we haven't missed an attestation, so it's fine. But the other three guys are being we now have no fault tolerance, can you please go fix this? And you can try and do penalization. It depends. You can take an oracle in that's listening to people, and that's one way that you can report. You can do fancier things with cryptography and proofs. That's kind of the long-term dream. But as I'm going to steal that of you can't prove someone didn't show up to work so easily.
Right.
But yeah, that idea of objectively measuring who's taking part is really quite tricky, and it can really kind of put a problem when you're doing pure permissionless. We don't know what's going on. The example being, if you have a 3 of 4 distributed validator, and you reward the 3 that are fastest and not the person that's slow, you have this kind of centralization effect where they're let's just all go nearby each other, and then we'll always make the money, and the one that's kind of furthest away, that is the most decentralized, gets kind of the most hurt. But how do you differentiate that from running just a really low-powered node that you kind of cheaped out on, and that's why it's slow, not because it's very far away?
It sounds like what you're saying is you'd want to rate them as a whole.
Both.
Okay.
As a whole is most important, but beyond that, how do you look into the distributed validator and make sure that they're all pulling their weight? Because I kind of refer to it as, we started with trusted distributed validators. You have to have some level of trust in your counterparties. If they're offline, you can blow them up on Twitter, be please fix your node. Maybe someone else can step in and slash them, but it's hard to be super objective about it. But I guess someone to take the other side of that.
Lansky, let's hear your perspective on this.
No, it was more of a question, and I think I was going towards you were going, but I guess what matters here is are we rewarding, or are we at what part of the stack, at what layer of the stack are we? If I'm an application that I want to derive my security, I'm probably going to be focusing at the validator layer. And I don't really care if this is a single validator, it's a professional validator, it's a solo staker, it's a DVT run. So from that perspective, what matters is okay, who is the operator of this? And it's a single, it's a DVT, and how they want to organize their work. And I think here, having this variety of this panoply of options and the flexibility to move from one to the other and participate maybe in several ones as well from the same setup. Maybe I can have OVAL, maybe I can have SSV, maybe I can have Diva, maybe I can have Safe Stake, maybe I can have like all of them at the same time, and one of them is going to perform better than the other or not.
Right.
Yeah, I can only echo most of that. The way I see it is either you go on your own, it's kind of like you're a solo driver, or you're part of an Uber or whatever, and then I think Rated Network has a really good vision, which is we want to have performance for machines, but that has two different meanings. So maybe the solution is that the network accepting that kind of restaking has to choose what fits them, or maybe there's an aggregate or some kind of scoring, but from the perspective of a protocol, the way we think about it is we care about overall performance. And to that extent, it doesn't matter if we have really bad individual nodes, because DVT allows us to bring that 97% uptime to 99.99. And in the end, I think what you care is you go to an office and that office is open. You don't care if individual people are there. And I think it's really up to the integrators to make those choices.
Right, so it sounds like there's various ways that this can be done. Various ways to look. I have another question for you, Pablo, if I may. So at the beginning was mentioning this idea of there's shared liquidity, and then there's this shared infrastructure. And Diva's combining the two of them together, shared liquidity and shared infrastructure. Do you see particular advantages of this, like moving forward into restaking? Are there different ways that people could say, leverage the fact that they have these LSTs from their node operator set that they're a part of?
Yeah, so we're solving a really different problem than other providers like OVAL or ShareStake. The way we think about it is very strongly opinionated. So we tightly integrate the economics with the DVT itself. And because of that very integrated stack, I think there are advantages for restaking, because we already do restaking at the operator level. So if in the future it becomes good for users, good for operators to integrate something, that's something that you could integrate in that stack, and you would only need to think of one point of integration. But depending on how the industry moves, that might end up with a lot of fragmentation. So I think it's important to start thinking about this standardization, these marketplaces and systems, like you're saying, because that would allow this fragmentation to potentially adopt a standard and connect to something greater.
Great, thank you. So that brings us into a whole other topic. Like when we're talking about restaking, how do we pull DVT into this? Like, what are the conversations that people should be having about DVT and restaking? Because there are, the multiple different types. There's economic security, and then what DVT can bring is actually this consensus security, this settlement security. Like, how do we do this?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think it's something that is very important in the restaking dialogue. Is a lot of times, if you're a purchaser of restake security, you want to be 100% sure, as close as you can, that the stake that you are restaking with is secure. It's not going to get slashed. It's going to be there when you need it. The last thing you really want, if you're, buying restaking security and then turns out all under the hood it was run by one operator, and then they screw up and they get it all slashed, you're like, uh-oh, my protocol now has no protection, and it was supposed to. There's 27 days until it comes out the queue, the far side, and I get paid. That's not a very compelling product to buy. So instead, if you are looking for restaking, you want to be as sure as is feasible that it's this thing is rock solid, it's run by groups, they're well maintained, they're well distributed. I do not expect the underlying stake to fail. So then I will, pay to restake it. I will opt in for these extra, guarantees. That's probably why I think, DVT is extremely important in restaking, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, would you want them to be able to join these clusters permissionlessly, or do you think there should be some sort of approval? Where do you fall in here?
I'm dubious of restaking, of letting people pick other people to take risk. That's kind of the delegated restake of I have my token, I'm gonna send it over to these node operators and lock it up and hope that they restake for me.
Right.
But yeah, I would probably but again, you'd hope that the wisdom of the crowds is better than one person picking, but either way, I would be still a little skeptical of restaking. To be
I agree with you, and I think there is some risk when there's no, somebody doesn't have skin in the game, that's the whole concept of where if they have nothing to lose, only something to gain, well, maybe they can find other ways to find something to gain. So I agree, there's a lot of things where we need the node operators to actually want to do it and have their own capital at risk as well.
100%.
Any other thoughts here, guys?
Yeah, actually, I'm very bullish about DVT personally. We expect that all the current Solo staker will eventually become DVT staker. And in the latest Ethereum core dev AMA, they also admitted that DVT is midterm necessary to the current staking ecosystem. But when we talk about the restaking protocol leverage this basic layer asset security, it will bring another issue to this sector, because if the restaking protocol get compromised, a portion of this validator is forced to exit, and the Ether get liquidated to pay back the
with
restaking.
some models will force you to exit. That's not all models. Blockswap Cloud doesn't force exits. Yeah.
So I will suggest the restaking protocol maybe set some debt ceiling mechanism to manage this parameter for the common good of ecosystem.
Right. Thank you. That's a good input.
I would just realizing that maybe there's an argument to be made that there should be a health factor, ensuring that there's not correlations. Maybe there should be a limit on how much you're able to take, because some cases might be quite resilient despite that. In other cases, you might really want high quality collateral. So maybe we shouldn't be thinking about restaking as a pile that you can keep adding on forever, but maybe there should be like a kind of limit to what you can do or to which things you can accept for certain protocols.
Right. The implementation is very important.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts? No? Okay. Well, I think we're out of time anyways. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining us and sharing, some of your thoughts here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.